Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's episode of the Scenic Route by the Time to Wind Down team. My name's Andy Cops, a storyteller. You know me hopefully pretty well by now, and you know my wonderful co-hosts, Gerard and Michelle. Guys, give me a wave. Give me a wave. All right. Michelle, where's my wine? I didn't get my wine. Gerard, I'm going to have words with you afterwards. That's okay. Now, we've got two wonderful guests, very local to us here in the UK, but I'm going to allow Gerard to introduce them to us today. But before we do that, I want you to do something very, very important. We are really trying hard to get our YouTube subscribers up, right? So I want you, if you are watching this for the first time, please hit the subscription button. Subscribe now and click that little bell thingy as well, all right? Because you know what? You might get distracted and you might have to leave this video. We don't want that to happen, but just please do it now before you forget. All right, great. Now, without further ado, Gerard, who are these two wonderful people that have joined us today?
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to Scenic Route. It's always wonderful to have you guys and enjoying our show. And today we've got some beautiful guests here with us, Emma and Barry. There's different ways I could introduce them, but it depends on if they're sitting in South Africa sipping wine or they're sipping in the UK and sitting in the UK and sipping wine, because where they are now is in the beautiful where are you, Mannings Heath?
We are at Mannings Heath. Yeah, we're in Mannings Heath at the moment, building.
There you go. So they could be all in Mannings Heath, they could be all in Leonards Gardens, or they could be sitting in Benguela Cove in South Africa. So you never know where they're going to be, but most of the time I think they're situated in around Mannings Heath and Leonards Lee. Lovely people. I'm not going to tell you too much because I think they will tell you themselves. So welcome, Emma and Barry.
Thank you very much.
Now I should just say to you, Emma and Barry, I want Michelle to sort of, you may not know how these Scenic Route.
I know, I'm a little bit nervous.
Yeah, you should be nervous. You should be very nervous. No, that's it. Have a little bit more wine because it will help. You see, what Michelle does is before the events, she goes and she finds challenging questions. But don't worry, there are only three. But the good news is that there's two of you.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so it's a
team effort, is it?
So if the signal breaks, I can just do this if I don't know the answer and freeze and pretend it's the internet's fault.
But we'll get to the questions later. But I just wanted to let you know now so that you can prepare yourself for Michelle's questions. But why don't, Gerard, what sort of questions, what should we ask Emma and Barry to do? Should we ask them just to give us a little bit of insight into, we mentioned Benguela Cove, UK, we mentioned Leonards Lee, Mannings Heath. There's a lot for many of our subscribers, our listeners, our followers. They may not know exactly where that is. So Emma and Barry, maybe you can help us out. Where in the UK is Leonards Lee Gardens and Mannings? And tell us a little bit about Benguela Cove as well, if you can.
Yeah, you can.
So I'll go first because I'm actually a local girl. So Mannings Heath and Leonards Lee Gardens are down in West Sussex, sunny West Sussex. I think the whole UK is sunny today, but we are always sunny in Sussex. Just outside a town called Horsham. For people who don't know West Sussex well, we're about 20 minutes down from Gatwick or half an hour up from Brighton, depending on which way you're driving. Mannings Heath and Leonards Lee Gardens have been part of the local history in this area for hundreds of years. The garden's 200. The golf course was established in 1905. So both properties are old and have been around a long time, but are both currently owned by the Streeter family. And the Streeter family own Benguela Cove in South Africa, and Penny Streeter, who is head honcho to this whole family, that's where she lives, in Benguela Cove in South Africa. And she bought that a few years ago, and at that time didn't really know much about wine, did she? But just keen to get involved. She had hospitality experience and didn't think really how much wine she had bought, but her vision and her passion to introduce these wines to the rest of the world has shined through, and that's what we're doing here at the moment, is introducing Benguela Cove wines to the UK from our UK sites. And you can come visit us, we'll come to you, we supply lovely people like Gerard, and you can get wine everywhere. So yeah, and then do you want to go on to the English side of the story?
Yeah, so I think that the English side of the story began in 2017, actually 2016. Penny started looking for the perfect property to plant vines, and stumbled across Mannings Heath golf estate at that time. It was two 18-hole golf courses with actually perfect sites to plant vines. So really good southern slopes, warm southern slopes, low altitudes, good soils, which they then purchased and set about planting the first 37 acres. The main aim and drive behind this was the surge in the sparkling wine market, and realizing that we could compete with the best in the world and make world-class sparkling wines here. So 37 acres of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier have been planted in different proportions. It was in 2018 that vines were then planted on a sister estate, Lennersley. We planted Pinot Noir there, and of course you all know well about it. We planted Pinotage, the first UK Pinotage ever planted. Very much an experimental block was planted, the first locally, so we're quite excited about that. It's a little bit of a waiting game on the sparkling wine. We've tasted the 2020 and blended the 2021 actually last week with our South African winemaker, cellar master Johann Fourie. He flew across and we made up the blends and tasted the wines. And I think that is such an exciting moment, that because there's a huge trust in planting the vines. You never really know what your site's going to deliver. We have an idea, but you only really see those results when it's finally in the glass. And I can tell you now, when we do launch those wines in 2024, they're certainly going to be worth the wait.
We have to wait until then.
I know.
If you're lucky, actually.
Yeah,
If you're lucky.
I know it feels, although we keep saying it feels like a long time away, but actually when we both started within the company here 3 years ago, it seemed, really long, and now we're thinking actually it's 18 months. It's coming up really quick. So actually it does seem a long time away, but from where we started, it's not, which makes it even more exciting. Slightly scary thinking it's suddenly going to be here and there's a lot still to do, but an exciting scary, not a scary like a ghost scary.
Absolutely. And I think the other day when I saw on your social media, you've been playing around with your chemical set and
Yes.
blending and keep on tasting and blending. So that's always exciting, because that's your sort of next step that you go, okay, cool, this is what we hope is going to achieve later on. But actually, Barry, why don't you tell us a little bit why and how and when and what did you decide to sort of play with the other day?
I mean, we've got some great blending blocks, if you want to call that we can play with. We are obviously still early doors for the Lennersley wine brand. 60% of the wines we're making are Chardonnay, so we have different portions of Chardonnay that we played with, including a reserve Blanc to Blanc, or the wine from 2020, which looks really sexy, I must admit. And we've definitely added a nice little percentage of that into the 2021 blends. Remembering 2020 was almost the ideal growing conditions, so it was a phenomenal vintage, and it really was a good vintage to start our journey into English wine. Myself coming across from South Africa in 2019, at that time I thought, these are not bad, these are great summers, and it was a phenomenal summer in 2020. And then the reality hit in 2021, which was really cool, wet, long, almost didn't feel like summer ever did arrive, which for viticulture, that was a huge challenge, being that, it was difficult to ripen your fruit. We had a fairly light crop load because our vines are still very young, and we managed to keep the disease out of our vines. So we didn't have pressure on disease, which a lot of the rest of the UK did have disease pressure. So actually the wines from 2021, higher acidities, but speaking to other winemakers in the area, a lot of the great UK wines are actually made on years with really high acids. They just need time. And I think that's, we talk about 2024, possibly on the 2021 vintage, we might have to lay down for even longer to really achieve the quality. And I think that's the, for Penny Streeter, that is the absolute guiding light, that it's all about quality and making sure we can produce the best product at the end of the day. And that if that means waiting another year or two, we need to do that.
It has, just going back to what you're saying about the weather, it's been interesting with Barry having come from South Africa, that journey of the different weather types. And it's like, is this normal? Like, there's nothing normal in the UK. There's no year the same. And it's like the example we're having now with this heat wave and everyone's melting, and you'll go, but don't worry, in 2 weeks it'll be pouring with rain again, because there's no consistency with our season.
Are the vines getting confused?
Yeah, they're happy at the moment.
Vines are enjoying 2022 summer so far.
So far.
They're really looking good. Yeah.
Yeah.
The long may it last.
Now, speaking of looking good, both of you look very relaxed and unsettled. And yes, it's wonderful having you as our guests. But it's at this point that I'd like to unsettle you a little. I'm going to invite Michelle. Michelle's been very quiet in the background there, but she's just getting ready for question number 1. Now, unfortunately, our resident musician, who normally joins us on the show, Joe Hannon from Eden Bay, couldn't join us today. And but what we do is we allow our guests to phone a friend. Now, because there's 2 of you, we're going to take that permission away. So we're not going to allow you to phone a friend, because that will just slow things down. But we are going to allow you to confer with one another. I think
Okay.
All right. So Michelle, over to you, please. Let's give Barry and Emma question number 1. And Gerard will keep a tally of how you do in the scoring. That's his
Have a
job.
pen, Gerard.
See, this is like Barry's going, I'm sure I was meant to be in a different call now. I'm sure I was meant to be in a different meeting. And no.
You got this.
You're here.
Okay, well, we didn't say too much yet about Pinotage, which is obviously our favorite topic of discussion. And it was in April that we were up at Leonard's Lee in the first commercial UK Pinotage vineyard and tasting that lovely first UK Pinotage. So the story of Pinotage, we all know, Gerard's great-grandfather took these 2 plants and he made 4 seedlings in, well, you're not sure, we said 1924, but we'll go with maybe 1925. And then he left them there, and there was a succession of things. But when, do you know when and by who the first Pinotage was ever made?
Oh. This is definitely a Barry question.
Are we talking about which wine brand or winemaker?
No, the winemaker, so the person.
Goodness.
And which year?
I feel like we should be able to ring Johann at this point. Oh, I don't know. Do you have a clue?
I'm going to have to phone him.
We're going to phone Johann. That's it. We're phoning our winemaker. I know you took away that option, Andy, but I'm doing it.
Okay, that's brilliant. Actually, this is lovely.
We just make our own rules up. We do.
No,
a bit like planting Pinotage in the UK. We just make our own rules up.
The only problem with our seller, Marcy, he never answers his phone.
Yeah, he never does.
I just want to
He
say,
did.
no way.
Yeah. So we're on this YouTube call with Gerard, and they're asking us, Emma and myself, a very difficult question. So I'm phoning a friend to get an answer. Who made the first South African Pinotage?
Bellevue made it. Who was the wine? Do you know who the winemaker was?
No, we're not going to the first commercial Pinotage. We're going to the first barrel, almost like a certain barrel we saw quite recently. Although this one I'm talking about was not for Bellevue. That was under the Langerak. So, yeah.
So no, he said no idea. You've got no idea on that bit. No,
Right.
We're out.
So we're all out on that question.
Thank you, Johann.
I might phone you again for the next one. Okay, pal. Bye.
The first winemaker was C.T. Duval, and he made it in 1941.
I'm going to write this down so I remember for next time.
And he was a lecturer, wasn't he? He was the successor to Arbor Isak Perald at Stellenbosch.
So he was his successor.
Yes, and he made that first barrel, but it wasn't bottled. So the first bottle with the Pinotage name on the bottle was under the Lanzarote label, but it came from Bellevue. So and that was in 1959. So it's a bit of a
I just think we should get like half a point for that.
Gerard's the judge.
Gerard's telling up the score there.
We did check if my scoring card works like that. Well, actually, the computer says yes.
Okay. All right. Half a point. All right. Whew. How are you feeling, Emma and Barry? You feeling all right? A little unsettled on that?
Got a lovely glass of Benguela Cove Chardonnay. So we're feeling good.
Good.
Can you hold it up? You both. Amazing.
Gorgeous color.
And a beautiful Sauvignon Blanc as well.
See, that's the lighthouse Sauvignon he's got there in yours. They're stunning. Yes.
With a lovely gold label on it as well, saying 2021.
Nice.
Now, Gerard, you've got quite a collection of wines behind you. What other Benguela Cove wines have you got there?
Oh, okay. Actually, let me think. Do I have any? Yeah, no, I do. Yeah, no. Sometimes in the wine trade, you get very sad sometimes when people break your stuff when you're trying to get it to your customers, and then it comes back to you. But sometimes that sadness turns into something great, because I've got a bottle here that is very rare to find nowadays. That Emma told me earlier. That actually I've got a lovely blend. The Coulage 2015 that I've got here stored away here somewhere, nicely for one day to enjoy. And I've got a lovely little 2015 or 16, I think, Chardonnay as well. So I've got a couple of gems in here. Yeah.
I said I'm going to be on the next train down, and suddenly you'll realise there's gaps, and it's because I've been in.
And luck, I'm going to check the security a bit more up to scratch.
Yeah, I'm intrigued, because I know we're going to be talking about the Pinotage. We're going to be talking about the upcoming event that we have later in the year. But the Pinotage story that you guys shared with us last year, the Benguela Cove Pinotage, and how the cellar master or winemaker Johann Fourie was involved in the process. Is that maybe Barry? I think it comes to you, because I think that story is absolutely amazing. I wondered, are you able to share that story at all?
Is that how we made the first barrel of wine?
Yeah, and how Johann actually came to taste it.
Oh yes, right.
Yeah.
So we I think Johann didn't have total confidence in the winemaking abilities of us here in the UK, and he always held, he held in reserve of what he would think of that Pinotage. And I sent across a sample.
Suitcase with you.
I did go in my suitcase. You're right.
Yeah, and then the suitcase got lost.
Yes, that's right. So you tell that part of the story.
And so the suitcase got lost, and the sample then ended up at your mother-in-law, mum's house, and then it got sent to an office, and then was just sent to Benguela Cove for so at this point it's just a Chili's bottle, a blue bottle, no label, nothing, no idea where it's come from. We didn't question that he hadn't got it, and about 3 weeks after you'd been back from South Africa, we were on a call about something, and suddenly you said, I must remember to get my Chili's bottle back from you. I was on my way out, wasn't I, to South Africa? And I said, I'll bring my bottle back. And he went, and you just honestly, over the phone, over a Zoom call, you just heard this penny drop. And he went, is that what sat on my desk? And he had no idea where this random bottle had appeared from. And he was ringing up Chile to see if it was a promotional thing for them to show how they could store wine. He was ringing different winemakers to see if they'd sent it to him. He couldn't work out where this random bottle had appeared. So he was obviously very reluctant to try it. And it's just sat there on his desk for 3 weeks, just sat there, this first vintage of Pinotage he's been waiting for, not knowing what it was. But so that was...
He didn't taste it there and then on the Zoom call.
He still did. He did still then. He said he was aware that it wouldn't obviously be at the point we would like him to taste it, but we're very fortunate. He's such a knowledgeable guy with such a wealth of foresight into how things go, so he did try it. But yes, that I took a fresh sample when I then went out to South Africa a couple of weeks later. So, and I guarded it with my life, I think, till we got it in his hands. So.
And I mean, Emma, when you told us a story when we were sitting around the fire with the backdrop of the Leonardslee vines and eating that amazing food and drinking sensational wines, you told us about the whole harvest process, and I think that was quite an experience for all the team.
It really was. I mean, I've obviously I come from a completely different background and changed careers. So for me, every step of this journey has been a learning curve, but also an incredibly exciting journey. But when we did that first harvest during lockdown, during COVID, you know, where we allowed people, weren't we? Because it's 2020 and we had them in. I've never used my first aid skills so much as I did that day. People with sharp secateurs need more lessons in how to cut through without not cutting their fingers. But yes, we handpicked, we destemmed, pressed, and everything was done with a lot of love, sweat and tears on site. So yeah, it's a huge experience, really, isn't it? The whole journey. It's not just the first time that Pinotage has been planted in the UK. It's the first time we've made a barrel. It's the first time we've produced wine off of the land here. So that there's so many firsts that you can't almost list them.
There's a lot of love in that barrel, is what I can say, and I think you most should be tasted in the wine that you guys enjoyed in the Leonardslee vineyard. You know. And there's a lot of people waiting for that wine to finally be bottled, and I don't believe it'll ever get to market. I think it's a wine that will organically sell to the people that have been part of that journey.
Yeah, they'll be standing behind us in the queue.
I know.
We know you in the front of the queue.
I know.
It's
plenty of gaps.
First bottles will go to the people that remained and helped us destem. I don't know how many thousand bunches by hand. And there weren't a lot of them because we had this fantastic.
If we came this year, could we make up for last year?
Well, yeah, we can. Yeah, that's fine. We'll do that. Okay. But no, you said, like Barry was about to say, that first group, there's all these lovely people for lunch, and for the wine, wasn't there?
Yeah, they enjoyed the jolly, and they enjoyed a bit of picking. But they decided this destalking by hand was the absolute.
No, thank you. So, and they went home.
Yeah.
And we sat there till 9 o'clock at night still.
I think it was more like 1 a.m. if I remember.
No, I went home at 9.
Yeah, I think you did. Don't even think that you're going to claim that you waited there till the end.
I wasn't there till the end. I went home. I'm out.
Oh well, yeah, but actually, it's a shame. Of course, you guys said I could come down, but unfortunately, I couldn't come. But yeah, I would have loved to be there for that hard work, sweat.
You'll be here this year.
Yeah, you'll be here this year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when does harvest start? I mean, how long a duration are we talking?
We're talking this is the tough bit. Everyone says to me, must peg a date for harvest, but as you all know, the seasons vary. You know, our first grape harvest in 2020 was the end of September.
Yeah.
2021 being a really slow, cold season, we harvested the last grapes towards the end of October. Pinotage being a fairly early ripener, we predicting this year to be that first or second week of October.
Yeah.
And because it's Pinotage Day on the
8th October,
we thought it was apt to harvest our Pinotage on the 8th.
We're going to do it the day before.
The day before.
We like Fridays.
So we just hope the wine gods are watching us and helping us as sugars accumulate, and we have a fantastic vintage this year.
We'll have a chat with Dionysus, the god.
That's it.
Please do, yeah.
But like you said there, Andy, it's one of probably the most common questions we get asked: when is harvest? So like when we're showing people around the vineyards and we're talking about winemaking, they're like, well, when do you pick? And we're like, well, when the weather tells us it's okay to. That's the bottom line. But yeah, trying to organise people and staff and pickers, it's a fun game then.
Cool. Right, in terms of a fun game, I think it's question number 2. Michelle, Emma's looking far too settled. Let's make her a little more unsettled.
Right. I'm going to give you an easy one. One, yeah. So Pinotage, obviously, is a combination of 2 grapes, Pinot Noir and Hermitage, which it was called.
I thought that was the question. I thought that was
I don't know the answer to this one. I'm ready.
So they named it Pinotage for that reason, but there was another name that it could have been that they seriously considered. Would you want to take a wild guess on that?
Well, if it was, because obviously Hermitage has another name as well. She
Mhm.
can call it Cesson. So I'm now in my brain, like when people combine names,
Yeah.
I'm going, right, so Pinotage is obviously a cross between the Pinot and Hermitage. So I'm now like Pinot Noir, so I'm like
That's a really wild guess.
Taj.
Fair enough, but not. No,
As you can hear, we have absolutely no idea.
no.
We don't have that wealth of knowledge that that man with a beautiful South African flag behind him knows that we don't.
You think I've got the knowledge, but sometimes I think Michelle is our guru in the group. So sometimes she might let me know. Listen, did you know? I go, really? I should know this. But yeah.
We're not doing well here, Michelle. That's all I can say.
No, I thought I was going to give you an easy one. This one, they used to call it Hermitage ex Pinot. So they used to call it Perrault's Hermitage Pinot. That was its long name.
Okay.
And then they went into the vineyard, and him and it was Duval, I think, that came up with Pinotage. But the strong runner was Hermanoir. So Hermitage and Pinot Noir. So Hermanoir would have been
So I wasn't
the other
far
option.
because I got the
No.
noir in there. I just
Yeah.
didn't quite go far enough with my.
I actually think that's half a point, Gerard.
Thanks, that's another half.
Well, hold on. I need to ask the computer first.
Oh yeah, sorry. Ask the computer.
Yeah, let me work it out first.
Okay.
I'm a bit slow and I perceive, But no, actually, we're talking about the Hermitage, and that's quite interesting. Is do you guys know why you can't use Hermitage in South Africa?
No, do you know?
This is a bonus question to help them get.
I will help you a little bit because
Okay,
luckily I've got this lovely lady called Michelle. Me and Michelle working on Pinotage quite closely together for some bits and pieces coming up in the future. But basically, if you can't remember exactly the years, but there was a trade deal between France and South Africa for crayfish. The crayfish, what you call it, Michelle?
The crayfish agreement in 1935.
Here we go. That's why I've got Michelle. And because then for that trade deal was there, that's when France said to South Africa, okay, cool, we'll take the deal, but then you can't call Hermitage. Hermitage, you need to call it Cinsault.
Oh.
Yeah, so France said you can't use our regional names anymore. And I think that's the same time that they couldn't use all the others as well. So we'll import your crayfish, but then you don't use our names. And that's when it became, luckily, just before Pinotage was named.
Yeah. Well, that's a good fact. I'm going to add that to my storytelling, aren't you?
Yeah.
Anyone who comes in now for a wine tasting, I'll be like, I've got all this new information. You just need to sit. I'll pour you an extra glass of wine. I'm going to tell you all of it.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. The Pinotage story is very rich. There's a lot of interesting and funny little anecdotes in there.
Absolutely. There's plenty to tell about it.
I want to pick up on something you said, Barry, because you said Johann Fourie wasn't too confident about the UK winemakers. So there's a little bit of is the competition still going strong? Is it?
It always will be. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Johann was meant to be here to make the wine, and obviously COVID hit and he was forced to stay behind. And, we had long discussions. Are we actually going to continue with that Pinotage, or are we going to send it off to Whiston and include it in our sparkling in some way or form? And the decision was, let's give it a go. Because, every year you make that wine, you learn, and it's part of your history book, isn't it? So, no, I think Johann's really pleased with the product. If we weren't, we wouldn't be putting it in bottle. So, and putting it under our brand name. So, we're really pleased. I mean, it's certainly a cool climate version. Certainly, the characteristics are more Pinot Noir in nature. So, I think if you benchmarked it next to a big South African Pinotage, it's certainly very different. But in its own right, it really stands out. And I think as a UK red still wine, it's really exciting. And there's very few people that have tasted it. I think the group that are sitting around this table today have all tasted it, and you know, I don't think we would even be having this discussion if you thought it was terrible. Yeah.
No,
I
it's
said to, 'cause
exceptional.
I had a bottle of the Benguela Cove Pinot Noir, and I was drinking it at home, and I thought, oh, hang on, it was very, it resonated quite a lot with the event that we had at Leonard's Lee, and I wondered, and I'm sure you have done this, but I'd be intrigued to taste the UK Pinotage with the Pinot Noir together to see.
I think there's lots of things we want to do, isn't there? Like you said, there's this element of how much we take out the barrel before we've actually bottled it, because obviously we've got nothing else to put back in. But also, like Barry said, I think when we do have this bottled, we almost said you almost don't need a label, because we're going to go out so quickly. Because there's this queue of people, and like you said, you want to do these experiments, you want to see if that works, you want to try food pairings, you want to do all these things. So as the vintages come up year on year, we're ready to help people understand it more and explore it.
It's interesting about labels. I spoke to my parents the other day, and they were at my aunt's, and my aunt's got a bottle of like a dessert sweet wine at home, but it's just a little sticker label on it. And it was my great-grandfather's handwriting saying it's a sweet wine on it. So luckily they said you can have it, so it will be here behind me on my shelf. So that's fantastic to have. But it's just that thing. Sometimes you have those wines, and there's something probably they made to him and a friend or whatever, and another wine he came up with and tried and made it, and it was just this little handwritten label on it. And I think sometimes with special stuff like that is incredible. Maybe you should.
It's part of the story, isn't it? It's that storytelling element, that it's not just manufactured. There is this story behind it.
Absolutely, yeah.
How much of like a first vintage do you say, right, this is for the library, we've got to keep this, you know, is there a rule of thumb?
That's on the sparkling, isn't it, really?
The Pinotage is going to be tough to hold back, but you know, I think also, you know, we're not sure that wine would have huge legs. I think that, you know, being an English red, we don't know, and only time will tell that. So we certainly will keep back for the library, and that'll give us the answer. How long can we age these wines, and do they improve with time? So I'd like to keep back. You know, we're only producing this year, you know, our first vintage 400 bottles, so maybe 10% of that we'll hold back, but we can all enjoy in a few years to come.
It's been one of the questions we've questioned with whether or not to hold it, wasn't it, till the launch of the English sparkling, but actually we don't know how well it will keep going, you know, and you don't want to ruin it and actually miss out on this opportunity to enjoy it. It's all part of that learning curve.
Yeah. So on the subject of learning curve, I got a really easy question. Emma and Barry, are you ready for question number 3?
You got another question?
Oh yes, it's always
frozen.
It did freeze, which is a good thing.
You see, it froze. I was like, that's okay with no question.
Oh yeah, but the points at the moment I think is on 1. So we'll see.
Pretty good.
All right, Michelle, question number 3.
Okay, so Pinotage, obviously. Pinotage hasn't always had a very good rap. There's an incident. So in 1959, the Lanzarote won the Cape Wine Show, won a best wine. So everybody in South Africa thought, let's plant Pinotage. But then there was a big event. There were British tasters that came to South Africa in 1976, and they didn't like it very much. Do you know some of the descriptions that they gave Pinotage? It was quite a famous way that they described. They said it tasted like something.
What would you say? What would you?
Well, I know Pinotage is the most beautiful, versatile grape, but it needs to be planted on the right sites.
Yeah.
And as you said, that was the problem in SA, is a lot of Pinotage ended up in the wrong areas, which led to not the best wines. And it's great to see now that how well Pinotage is doing again, and it's really been respected and put in the right areas. And I know in SA, the biggest challenge, or the incorrect sites would lead to very green wines, and so I'd imagine that word would be somewhere along that line. what they called it, I've no idea, to be honest.
See, I just want to say I had to pick now because my original question was something that I don't think Gerard or Andy knows either. So I thought I'd give you a break on that one. So this one is, yes, it's got to do with the kind of acetone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like paint stripper.
Yeah, like they
Hot and horrible.
compared it to rusty
rubber.
nails. Rusty nails, yes.
Oh, right.
Burnt
Yeah.
rubber. The burnt
Yeah.
rubber and rusty nails.
Burnt rubber.
Yeah.
If you taste that in a Leonard's Lee Pinotage, then you're in the wrong place. That's for sure.
Yeah.
No,
No
and I
chance
think-
of burnt rubber here.
no, and I
Tell you
think a
what.
lot of winemakers didn't know how to handle Pinotage grape either. I think it's quite a specific handling process, I would
Yes.
imagine.
And
Yeah.
still,
Yes.
for
Yeah.
me personally, I'm still learning a lot, and I think a lot of winemakers I speak to, like Isel and stuff like that, and they all say it's still experimental wine. It's experimental
Mm.
grape. Even the grape's been there for many years, but it will become something much different. And I think for me, looking at it, and I hope Penny is putting in some cash to plant more, because I think it's definitely for me something that the UK suits as a red wine.
Well, I found it very interesting that the first commercial South African vineyard was actually in Soloris. It was in Myrtle Grove, which is now, it seems it's not a vineyard anymore. There's a lodge or something there, but it's quite mountainous. It's completely different than I would have imagined, because it came from Welgevallen, is where it was originally planted.
Okay, quite an interesting fact, that burnt rubber. I mean, that is definitely not a Pinotage variety thing. I think we all know that now. What they reckon the burnt rubber really came from was from the poles, the creosote poles. A lot of people planted their vineyards. So any new variety, there would have been a lot of new wooden pine poles which were dipped in creosote, and that creosote imparted its flavors into the grapes. So I think that whole burnt rubber thing is a very different story, and it's got nothing to do with Pinotage at all. It's to do with young grapes really planted with creosote poles. I mean, that's really been researched and looked into in detail, and that's something in South Africa. I mean, I started my career in viticulture there in 1993, and that was the only poles we used at the time, and that's now obviously stopped.
I was 10.
Looking good for my age, aren't I?
So sorry, I like to wind him up every so often.
But I think that's
years, right? Yeah.
I think that's why it's so important to kind of share the Pinotage, grape varietal, the taste. There's a lot of people that don't know it, and just associate it with, a heavy Cinsault kind of, which the UK Pinotage is completely different. It's very much a cold weather, version.
Yeah, it is, and like you said, it's not a very well-known grape in the UK within the UK sort of base of wine. So it's really nice to introduce them and tell them more about the South African roots of it, and bring that story to the UK public.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm looking forward to October.
I hope
Before
we'll
we
be bottled by then.
Well, if we get moving,
Yeah.
we're waiting for some corks to arrive.
Yeah, the corks are coming on our next shipment. The bottles are in our with our storage container. We have the bottles. We just need some corks, and just to find someone just to put it in bottle. Then we're all good. It's all good.
Fantastic.
So we'll have some, and hopefully we'll have a bit of news in the next few weeks, that hopefully positive news that we've got planning, and we'll start building our own winery. So our Leonard's Lee winery will be put up. Which we're hoping to launch, which will coincide with the launch of our sparkling wines in mid-2024. So
Oh, amazing.
Fantastic. Barry, something you said.
so that's the aim. So we have a lot to complete and do before. Sorry, Andy.
No. I was going on to talk about something which you mentioned, which I thought I'd like to just ask you about, which is really, you talk about starting your career in viticulture, but it was a conversation I had with my son, who's approaching the end of school, and he said to me, Dad, I have no idea what I want to do. So it sounds very familiar to the question I had with, or the conversation I had with my father. Now, growing up in the Western Cape, correct me if I'm wrong, but I maybe you're more influenced by what's going on in the industry and winemaking, and maybe you can find an interest into going into that field. But wondering about the future generation of winemaking, particularly in the UK, do you get approached by universities and colleges, work experience, things like that, or even interested students?
No, very much so. And actually our current vineyard manager he's a prodigy of that. He was a youngster who didn't really know what he wanted to do. He got into chefing and didn't enjoy that. Then he did a bit of building, I think, and that's where I ran into him. And I was looking for someone who was interested and wanted to learn, and basically knew how to drive a tractor. that was
the criteria. That's it.
Yeah,
drive a tractor, you're in. I was out for that reason.
I was very, very happy to impart knowledge, and so he was really excited about the wine industry and joined us. And we've now busy putting him through Plumpton. He's busy doing his apprenticeship through Plumpton. And I mean, he's absolutely loving the journey and loving his career path.
Yeah, and like you said, Austin's joy shone through last week. So while Johann was here and doing that, mixing a bottle of the 2020 First English Sparkling, was on site to do those things, and they brought the last bit back for the team here to just have a taste. And so Austin came over, and the Cheshire grin on his face, seeing what he'd been looking after in that vineyard for the last few years actually in the glass, and you could just see that passion that has been brought out of him by Barry. It was just shining through, and honestly I got a bit emotional watching doing it, thinking but it is. And actually as well, we've just had our first placement, haven't we? We had someone apply for work experience, and they've come and helped in the vineyard for a week. So like you said there, Andy, we're seeing more and more people requesting to come and do work experience with us, whereas that we haven't had that.
Yeah, I mean, and as a company, we love that. We love to impart knowledge and build people up in that way. So no, it's been fantastic. I mean, just another little example is Paul Dawson phoned me, I think it was on Tuesday night, to say, unfortunately, he's just tested positive with COVID, but don't worry, I'll be back at work tomorrow. I'll just stay in my tractor. So although he was, feeling absolutely awful with COVID and exhausted, he stayed in his tractor. I did hear today, though, that when he came up to the yard, he obviously was feeling so tired that he actually fell asleep in his tractor at around 3 o'clock, and he woke up at around 7 that night to go home. So I suppose you call that real dedication, and hats off to him. It's great.
Oh, that's fantastic. What a great story.
Yeah.
Well, you'll meet Austin in October because he's at the event, and obviously he's driving around collecting all the grapes, and he's such an example of, if you're put in the right hands, when you just show a tiny bit of interest, you'll grow into a grape. Basically, you'll grow into a wine, if you like. He's that tiny little vine you planted, and he's now blossoming, and he's having a great time.
Fantastic. Goodness me, look how time flies. Emma and Barry, you should be pleased to know that there are no more questions from Michelle. But I think we should go to our scorekeeper, Gerard. Can you please just tally up the score and let Emma and Barry know what they got out of a total of 3, please?
Out of a total of 3, they scored 1.
1.
Do you know what? I'll take 1. That's all good.
I'm too happy with that.
Better, we had worse, but one is a good score for our games, I think.
Well, you'll do us another one, and Barry and I'll be studying for a month, and you can come back and quiz us again, and we're on it.
Study Pinotage, and we'll ask you Chardonnay.
And we failed the Pinotage test.
Yeah.
Anybody watching this and potentially thinks they may be a guest for our show just needs to go back, and you start to, as long as you understand and learn more about Pinotage, you should be all right. But then Michelle does know if you are an expert or not, and the questions can get exceedingly harder.
Well, hopefully we train people in the Pinotage story, and so the questions will become harder.
Maybe we'll get a few good questions coming out, and we can tell the stories on our harvest event.
Yes.
and in October. So
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? Are we allowed to say anything right now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can talk about it. We're just in the process of finalising all the details, but there will be a harvest event on October the 7th, on the eve of Pinotage Day. Pinotage Day is always the second Saturday of October, so we are doing it on the Friday. And yes, the details are to come, but it will be at Lennersley in the vineyard. Come and have some wine, some food, and celebrate all things wine with us, basically.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
We're going to have a good number of weeks to actually get tickets sold. So
I'm definitely not driving that night.
and there won't be any tractor driving either.
Well, I don't know.
Need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Austin will still be collecting grapes all evening. He'll be fine.
All right, so guys, we've reached the end of today's show. It's thank you again to Emma and Barry for taking time out and meeting with us. I hope you guys have all enjoyed this. Please don't forget, if you haven't done so, but you've managed to stay with us the entire show, thank you. It's amazing. Please just hit that subscribe button, please. And tell your friends about Time to Wind Down the Scenic Route. Please share this video as well. We really, really are trying to grow our audience. So with your help, we know we can get there. So it's bye-bye from me, Andy. And it's bye-bye from my other two wonderful co-hosts.
I'm not a co-host, I'm just going to wave
You're
anyway.
just gonna wave. You got one.
It's just a wave.
And it's a big thank you again and a bye-bye from Emma and Barry in the
Thank you for having us, guys.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
have a good night.
Bye.
Bye bye.